Great. Thank you so much for having us. This is so exciting to be here and really looking forward to the discussion ahead. ArtSwitch are doing some really important work, so it's great to have everyone together to contribute and discuss in this forum. Maybe it would be good to start with each of the panelists going through and introducing yourselves. Bernadine, do you want to begin?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name's Bernadine. I'm the CEO of an art startup based in London called Vastari. And at Vastari, what we started out doing back in 2012 was setting up a database of private collections that is searchable by accredited verified museum curators for exhibition loans. And then as we developed in 2015, 2016, we launched a touring exhibition network, which we were the first to make the hiring fees mandatory and also the locations of things mandatory. And we were trying to make people more aware of where they are sourcing their content from and create unexpected matches, but also think sometimes about whether there is something closer by that you can find. I'm really excited to be on the panel today, and a lot of what we're thinking about right now at Vastari, given the lockdowns and the cancelled exhibitions programs, is the relationship between digital and physical content, and whether there is an opportunity for borrowing digital content using loan agreements and touring agreements in the same way as you do physical content.
Great. Yeah, I'm excited to get stuck into that. And then Andrew, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Have I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Hi. My name is Andrew Stramentov, and I am co-founder of Rokbox, which is it's a research and development company that was born out of the art world that wanted to be able to make ways that the art world could function more sustainably and safer. It's been going since about 2016-17, and we launched a product called the Rokbox, which is a box, a few years ago, and that's it. I'm done. Yes.
Brilliant. And Jason.
Hello, and thank you for ArtSwitch for having me. I'm Jason Losh. I work with Dietl International. I've been working for Dietl for the last 15 years. I have a unique perspective because I'm also a practicing artist. So as well as being an expert in art shipping, I know the studio side of the creating artwork as well too. But Dietl is focused on figuring out what we can do right now to create an immediate impact on our sustainability and helping our clients to develop ways to be sustainable and innovate in long-term solutions.
Amazing. Well, so pleased to have everyone here. And Bernadine, you raised such a good point about the changing nature of exhibitions and how that's going to impact the future of transport. But to begin with, I think it's good to think about the current context and what's going on. So I guess I wanted to start off the discussion with the question, what can we as art logistics or transporter companies do, and what are the innovative tools that are available on the market at the moment to create change? And Jason, do you want to begin the conversation and then we can kind of dart around?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think when we started talking about this, we wanted to really discuss too, what is exciting about what's happening right now, right? And I think for me, the most exciting thing that is taking place right now is the fact that we're all on this call having a conversation about what we can do to create an immediate impact to change the way that we address our current practices. And I think starting that, we need to take a harder look at the start of the process of what we do from the beginning as an institution or a company and address those concerns going forward. And that could be something as simple as looking at our loan contracts and making sure that the vendors that we're using have sustainable practices right away. If you're not using vendors or freight forwarders on your contracts that do sustainability, that's an issue right to begin with, right? So moving forward, those are the things that to me excite me, that we can then address other issues and invest in new technologies to push forward. And I should say too, Dietl, we've been offering carbon offsets for the last year and a half, 2 years for all shipments. And we measure the CO2 on every shipment, and we put that on every estimate that we send out to clients right now.
Brilliant. And I think, yeah, you're so right about the importance of conversation and connecting between companies, and that will help us as we move into the future and try new things and learn from each other. When we had a conversation prior to the talk, we were talking a lot about what we can do between our businesses, so institutions, our companies, that will instigate change and will educate, and how can we go about creating those forums and those channels of communication. And that then leads into consumer habits and what we're then doing to change that. I know, Bernadine, you had some interesting insights on that topic.
Yeah, definitely. As things were closed in 2020, we took a lot of time to reflect. And one of the things that we did in 2019 was we surveyed collectors that were on the Vastari platform about their habits. And just because we care about sustainability, we added a few questions about sustainability in there. And these answers were not related to this was pre-pandemic, so all of the data is not related to what happened in 2020. And already 62% of collections with an overall insurance value of over 10 million, so that's more than half, said that they were thinking about the sustainability and environmental impact of their collections, and specifically of maintaining the collections. So the majority were thinking about it. But what was really interesting for us was that we then asked for some qualitative data rather than the quantitative one to kind of get an idea of how people were thinking about changing their behaviors. And so we had more concrete things that relate to, for example, what Andrew's doing at Rokbox, where a European collector with an annual acquisition budget of 1 to 10 million said that sustainable forms of packing need to be found. And a British collector with an annual acquisition budget of 100,000 to $1 million said that zero emissions transport and renewable energy at storage locations was what he thought was concrete. But what I found interesting were the people that had no idea. So there literally was a European collector with a budget of 1 to 10 million who said, I have no idea, because the preservation of the work comes first. And interestingly, one North American collector with a budget of 100,000 to 1 million said, donate more, store less. And I found that such a strange quote, because what do they think happens to the art when it's donated to an institution? So I just was really interested to kind of, we've been talking about it internally and want to do follow-up surveys about this.
So interesting. And I think leads a lot into kind of the education as well of networks and clients and people that we work with. Andrew, I know that in your work, you're instigating change in an industry that has quite a traditional set of processes. How have you found that? What are some of the biggest challenges that you face?
What are the biggest challenges that we face? Cool, blimey, after 7 or 8 years, do you know what? I don't think, surprisingly, although it feels like everything's like an uphill struggle, I'm always surprised by the amount of change that's actually going on as we speak, right? I mean, 25 years ago, no one heard of Google. 10 years ago, no one had heard of Tesla. For the last few hundred years, people have been shipping, artworks in wooden cases. Now they started shipping them in different cases. So although it does seem from the outside that we have this enormous challenge, I mean, this environmental crisis that's going on, I think we should also recognize that there is changes. As Jason said, Dietl have been offering carbon offset and putting it on people's bills and showing people what it actually costs. So I'm not convinced it's all doom and gloom. That being said, I think behavior change is always challenging, right? And I think that the ease of throwing stuff away is something that we were used to for a really long time, right? And in the UK, at least, I'm kind of constantly surprised. We brought in this 5p carrier bag charge, right? And we did that only 5 or 6 years ago. And now everyone has reusable bags. So I think the art world, in the same way, there are kind of these things where people are recognizing they're starting to reuse things, change things. Sorry, I probably didn't answer your question very well.
It's very good, don't worry. But yeah, I think all of our backgrounds linked to innovation and technology, and I really wanted to kind of dig into what tools are out there and what promises that we can see for change through new technologies. and kind of rethinking these traditional processes and ways of working, and what we can introduce to just change the way that we're working. And it can be as simple as a new software, or, as Jason said, just sitting down and having the conversation and seeing what other people are doing. Jason, a question for you. What's the best way, do you think, to create current flows of transport? And is there a different approach to the engineering of transport possible?
I think there is definitely a way to address the issues that we are, sustainable practices and the way that we can address these issues right now. There are things we can do to change it. And I've taken a ton of notes on this because this is something I'm incredibly passionate about, and Dietl's really passionate about, but like, I could talk about this for hours. Our industry has many of the same issues that standard transportation industry does, but our issues are a little bit different because of the guidelines and the regulations that we put on shipping our artworks. So first and foremost, we're concerned about the safety of the artwork, right? Like, that comes above all else. So a lot of the things that other transportation industries are doing are like intermodal transport, so rail and ocean. And we can do ocean, and we do ocean often, but you have to be selective about when you do it and how you do it. And intermodal transport doesn't offer the right reliability. But what institutions or galleries can do is, right from the beginning, is start educating staff. And I'm a big proponent of education of staff. And it's not just your person sitting next to you, it's the museum director all the way down, and it's the person all the way from the bottom up, right? So if you're creating an environment where everybody is understanding what the cost of this is and who is interested in changing this long term, then that's where sort of the end goals come in. If we can, so if you're an institution and you're saying that you have to be first on, last off for every shipment, if you're an institution and you have to use an XU's truck every single time that you're transporting this and you're not consolidating, if you're an institution and you're saying that the ferry can't go the short distance and they have to do an XU's truck all the way around, even though the insurance might cover it otherwise, those are things that you need to be looking at to figure out if you are doing your due diligence from the very beginning, even before it gets to an art transporter or a freight forwarder like us.
So it's big changes in the supply chain, but also I think the key takeaway there is education, isn't it? Which makes it
just rethinking value systems too, right? Like rethinking the way that we approach, and if you're a gallery, rethinking what is costing so much money and so much in that offsetting, that carbon offsetting for the CO2, is those really quick turnaround shipments. If somebody asked in the comments, can we calculate for an art fair? Yes, but the problem with the art fairs is that galleries are picking their artworks a week before they ship, so it all goes air freight instead of ocean. Like, we need to rethink how we are addressing this from the very beginning before we do anything else.
And reminds me so much of some of the work being done by the Gallery Climate Coalition in the UK, because they said that it's rethinking value systems, but also schedules, and just knowing that if you are going to go to the art fair, then you need to be ready by X date so that you can get on the ship rather than going on the plane. And I think that, the last year has been a really interesting time for everyone to think about those systems and processes and how they can maybe adapt and change to be more sustainable.
Because they were forced to, right? So we got to see some things in action that people thought would never be possible. I know Annika from Artotech is on this call, and the launch of Virtual Courier has been a huge change for the industry.
I would say one other note on this as well too. We have to be really practical about what's possible too. So if every artist says they want to ship ocean for their exhibitions, that's not possible, because the ocean lines right now are backed up months and months. Like, you wouldn't get your artwork to an exhibition. So you'd have to plan so far out that your institution or your gallery, it wouldn't be an acceptable measure. Plus, those containers are not watertight all the time, and you can't guarantee that. So you have to use something like a Rokbox and make sure that you're in something that is water resistant inside of there to make sure that you are shipping in the appropriate manner. But it takes advanced planning for all of this stuff.
Jason, you've just solved it. I mean, brilliant.
I was trying, Andrew.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
But related to the planning as well, I think that if touring schedules could take into account more of proximities of location. So if you're going to, say, North America, that you do several legs of that tour and then go to Europe and then go to Asia, that makes such a big difference.
100%, Bernadine. That's a really good point.
And where does technology play into this? So what tools can we use, or what digital developments will there be, do you think, to help us with these new flows and ways of working?
Is that a question to, who is that to?
Yeah, who do you want to answer?
Bernadine, go ahead.
I'll say one quick one, and then Jason, you go ahead. All I would say is that in terms of technology, there is so much efficiency to be had if we start optimizing for APIs. So a lot of the data management within institutions and galleries is really inefficient, and you have to re-import data. You cannot have systems talking to each other. We don't use standard vocabularies for artist names, for objects, etc. And there are some initiatives to try and create standards. I mean, of course, linked open data has been around for a while. There's a new initiative called the Art Identification Standard that's trying to create, to enable APIs. The Art Innovators Alliance is also trying to facilitate APIs. So if we get more people caring about making that more efficient, then we can tell, the systems can tell us, actually, there is a more efficient way to do this.
Technologies on our side, we are working with partners who are developing reusable technologies and sustainable packaging right now. And there's some really new innovative things that I know a lot of companies are doing, including Rokbox, that will be coming out in the future. But one of the things that we are addressing is how do we route our vendors and consolidate our shipments and make sure that everything we're doing is in the most sustainable way possible. So looking at the very fundamentals of how we look at developing, and I think that starts by having conversations within our own company, so everybody is on that same network and they see where everything's moving all the time, so that there's more conversation between people. And just like what we've been talking about this entire time from the very beginning, addressing those issues.
Sorry, on this, I also think what's kind of interesting, and actually when we start analysing where the carbon footprint of the movement of artworks actually is, and delve down into it just a tiny bit, you start to understand some of the dynamics which could have a profound effect. So when we were developing this work with environmental scientists, we mapped journeys like London, New York, by air, and London, Geneva by road and by air. And we started to understand things like 90% of the carbon footprint in a journey from London to New York is in the air freight, which is all down to weight, so having things lighter. But then if you take a truck journey, 75% of the fuel will be used whether the truck is empty or loaded. So you might as well load that truck to the full. So kind of people, I think, sharing information, if people are doing art fairs and they're moving stuff by road, stacking stuff in and sort of having a slightly more circular way of sharing stuff, I think would go a long way to making it more efficient. I know from being in London, I mean, not last year, but certainly in most years, every day there was a bunch of half-empty lorries leaving London to go to Paris, half filled with art. So if those things can change, I think it'd be quite interesting.
I think
that's about technology again, right? Because unless you can confidentially share information to explain that there are boxes happening, are going in the same direction, it's impossible to do that. I know that there was a great company in the States that started helping truckers on return journeys fill up their trucks with not art but freight in general, so that they would be more efficient. They used to go back cross country empty, and if you can just use the technology to be able to know where the opportunities lie, it's great.
Couldn't agree more. And I think what you raised before as well about the importance of APIs to be able to information share between different databases and systems of information is going to be crucial in streamlining that.
I think one of the things I want to note on that too is like our industry, like we sort of pride ourselves on being, I don't want to say secretive, but quiet about where all of the artworks are moving and what they're doing, because our clients require that often, right? So, and our institutions don't want to share that information as well too. So the institutions need to be talking from the beginning before we even get involved in these processes to make sure that we are allowed to have that conversation to move forward. And I think simply too, like that education process, like we were talking about before, why we are putting the offsets and showing you exactly what your carbon footprint is on every single one of your shipments is, I have a chart in front of me, 800 kilos to offset to London from New York is $34. Like 100 kilos is $4. Like, why aren't you doing this? Like, even there's some amazing things. Like I saw Haley is on here from Art for Acres. Like, look up Art for Acres. It's another great project to sort of invest in and move forward. It's not just about carbon credits. It's about all of these things. It's multiple technologies and processes working together to figure out a solution.
Definitely will look them up. Thank you for that steer. And I think, yeah, we wanted to, the title of this panel is The Future of Art Transportation. And I think that is so rich as a subject. And a lot of the things that we've talked about is what is happening right now. But can we maybe imagine the future, say 2040, what that looks like, how potentially the art industry has changed so much, like what do we envision for that time, and how is that going to impact the transportation and the logistics? Bernadine, I know that
this I was going to put forward something, and I know I'm a bit of a wild card on this call because I'm not necessarily directly involved with art logistics, but what we have been thinking about a lot from listening to museums and collectors who are on our platform over the last year is that the future is a hybrid between physical and digital. And so if we look at how Vastari was when we started, it was primarily physical content going to physical venues. So you have a physical painting that is going to a physical museum for an exhibition. Increasingly, over the past 3 years, we saw digital content going to physical venues. So that included virtual reality experiences, image mapping and projections, or well, now we even have NFTs being registered on our platform as available for loan. So you have increasing digital content going to physical venues. But what is interesting to intellectually think about in 2040 is what are the digital venues that are evolving, and what is the logistics, and what are the loan agreements, and what are the situations of digital content going to digital venues. And in a more concrete way, what we've been thinking about is, for example, if you go onto Vastari and you're thinking of borrowing this specific artwork, could you look at a calculator that can tell you, this is how much it will cost you to ship this physical Picasso to your exhibition. This is what it will cost you in carbon to take this physical Picasso to the exhibition. And this is what it would be if you took it digitally. So whether that is digitally to the physical venue, projecting it, having an AR piece, etc., or if you exhibit it on the website or a virtual reality space, and that people can then assess whether in that specific situation, the carbon and the cost is worth it, and whether it could just be a supplementary image digitally rather than physically. And given the technology is getting better in terms of seeing things digitally, potentially that could be a future. But I know that sometimes for logistics, that's not the thing you want to hear. Maybe we're not going to be shipping the original object.
It's not that I don't want to hear it. It's that I've been in lockdown for months and I want to go and see some art, and I want to go and see some real stuff, and I want to look at paintings, and I want to go to the theatre, and I'd like to just go and see some stuff. So I understand there's been an enormous improvement in the technology around this. I understand that, Dietl have done amazing work about being able to count carbon credits, but I would love to envisage a future where we can still go and see real stuff and go and enjoy this stuff, and we create new, better ways of doing it, right? It's not a matter of stopping stuff. It's about trying to think about ways in which we can just be more inventive, right? So I'm not anti the digital. I understand certainly last year really took its place, but I really hope that it comes to a bit of an end right now.
And Andrew, I wish I was sitting in a room with all of you right now instead of over Zoom, right? So it's sort of the same thing.
I just think that it's unsustainable that we all, I think the future is hybrid. We're going to have conferences like this. We are going to have to do research via Zoom and not necessarily fly everywhere. That is the reality we're in. There are too many people and too many flights. We need to decrease it. You can, sorry, that's just.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
No, I 100% agree. I think one of the things that we will see in art transport is it's going to be a hybrid of solutions, including electric. We're working with one of our vendors right now is working on electric vehicles for their fleet in New York. It's going to be hydrogen fuel cell technology, but when I was researching this, it's not one solution for ocean, it's not one solution for air, because those engines don't work the same on all of these different vehicles, right? So it's going to be a hybrid solution for everything, including sustainability for our crating systems and our repackaging moving forward. And I think that we need to just really take a hard look at everything we're doing from the beginning of our processes. And I'm beating a dead horse when I say this, but we really need to address these issues right from the beginning and have conversations with everybody in our institutions and our companies right now. This is why I bring this up. I saw a question earlier on here and it says, should we have our artists and museums holding the public and our government accountable to meet these zero emission standards? And really, I think the institutions should be holding themselves accountable. Like, I think these institutions and artists should be looking at their own practices and first looking in-house to figure out what they're doing that can address change immediately right now, and then look to the public to address those issues.
Agree. And Jason, on that, I think this is, I think Zoom's brilliant, and I'm really glad to be part of this conference. I'm constantly surprised by how little people seem to be able to reflect about how much we have changed. So I'm going to do what the audience participation. So one of the questions I had, to implement change, you need to be able to measure it, was one of the questions put to me, which I fundamentally disagree with, because hands up here, who has used or bought a reusable water bottle in the last 5 years? A reusable, yeah. Everyone, right, has got one, right? There you go. Well done, Jason. Hands up who measured the difference that made in carbon or anything. And if anyone puts their hands up, I'm going to call you out as being a fraud because I don't believe you. But we all changed, we all did something, we made a change, and it has had this profound effect. And I think we need to just be a little bit more like, we can do this. We can, as Jason said, we can look actually today processes and make change now. It doesn't need to be this ethereal thing in the future. Anyway, shut up now.
No, a great way to kind of get your point across as well. Really accurate. I can see that we're coming up to 10 minutes left, and there's some questions that have come in, so I'm keen that we tackle those. But I think that this discussion so far has been brilliant and really highlighted some of the areas that we can focus on. So communicating together, opening of those channels of communication, using technology, innovation, education, everything can, and that will steer us on the right path. So the questions that have come in, I'm going to go through them from the top. So the ones that came in first, and then we can work through. There's one right here for you, Jason. Which actually really exciting, just in terms of discussions around art fairs. It's something that we're having conversations with as well at Convelio, and the opportunity there for more sustainable practices. Would you also be able to calculate the total carbon footprint generated by the shipments of your clients exhibiting at an art fair? Yeah, and in fact, in 2019, Fritz Dietl offset the entire group of shipments that shipped into Art Miami Basel himself. Mm-hmm. So we do calculate that, and we can offset all of those things, all aspects of it. And we can, in the breakout room, I'll go into more detail about how those offsetting calculations come into play and what it means. Brilliant. Great.
Sorry, just on that, Jason, did you say he offset the whole thing?
He offset, we had an entire freighter's worth of work coming in from Europe, and he bought out the carbon credits for the entire freighter of art coming in from Europe himself. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I just didn't advertise it. It's pretty cool. Sorry. Well done. Just press. Sorry.
Brilliant. And Bernadine, question for you. Could you share the results of the survey that you were talking about?
Yeah, I wrote it in the chat, so everyone can access it. It's available for free on our platform, so just register for the learning membership, and then maybe I'll send a link later on in the conference.
Great. Looking forward to it. And could you discuss the effect of Brexit on art logistics? I think it's probably a good one for you, Jason or Andrew.
I don't know if that is a sustainability question. That is more of a government policy question that I don't think we can address in the time limit that we have here.
About the effect on my soul.
Well, I can tell one thing. I know that some artists, in terms of new exhibitions, have decided to produce work on site in Europe so that they don't have to deal with logistics. So it kind of, yeah.
timelines are extended, transfer of works. Your good companies, your freight forwarders in London and everything have a handle on it now after it's been open for a little bit, and they're getting a sense of what it means.
Yep, very clear. And Andrew, were you able to quantify the carbon footprint for the making of the boxes? Actually, a question that I've always wanted to ask you as well, so I'm really pleased that one got raised.
Sorry, the carbon footprint for making our boxes or boxes in general?
No, you're obviously the Rokbox.
Yes, so in the development of Rokbox, we worked with a variety of different people. We worked with conservators and art technicians and industrial designers, but we also worked with environmental scientists and carried out something called LCA, which is a life cycle analysis, and to understand the dynamics of what a Rokbox is versus a museum case and a gallery case. Yeah, we carried out that work. It's what's quite weird about it is there are some things that are quite easy to quantify environmentally. Well, I say quite easy. It actually takes some complex journeys, for instance, are easier. When it comes, so Rokbox does two things better because obviously you're reusing it and transport, but also you're getting rid of the waste. So an LCA will tell you so much about the creation of something, but when if you reuse it 100 times, right, and you save 100 different artwork packages, what's that count? And what gets really difficult or complex is what do you do with the waste? Because there's different counts for that. If you take your wooden case that you've saved and you put it in the ground, the carbon that it's absorbed over time will then come out and it will rot and you'll get a methane gas, which is bad. And so that counts for something. Whereas if you burn it, you can actually get the energy, which is good. So there's, yeah, sorry, I would love to, we have tried as a team to make really simple ways of being able to unitize the carbon footprint of packaging. And because this is a relatively recent, we've only started looking at this recently, like globally as the art world, what does it actually matter? What does it actually count? It's in its infancy, but we've got quite far, not finished. Look at our website, I think.
Super interesting. And just because I see that we have a little bit of time, I actually want to jump that question over to Jason as well about your own studio practice. And are you measuring in that production space? Like how easy is it when you're creating something, be it a Rokbox, be it an artwork, just to be aware of the emissions that you're using in that process?
I think it's incredibly difficult. Like for me personally, I use objects that I find that are around in thrift stores and like flea markets and stuff, but like painting and going to like making sure that the tools and equipment that you're using in the studio are sustainable. Like what paints are you using and who are you sourcing them from? And are you getting them shipped from Amazon or where are they coming from? But also my studio is powered by solar and I used LED lighting and I'm trying to do my best, but I'm not perfect in any way, shape or form. And I think one of the things that we need to realize too is that artists don't have a lot of power in their gallery system. If I went to my gallery and I told them that they needed to ship sustainably 100% of the time, they might tell me to take a hike because I'm not the person paying the rent every day at that gallery. Now, as artists, we can hold the people that we work with accountable and we can educate our galleries as well too. And I think we have to, and I have done that to the best of my ability, but I think there has to be some realism in what is possible in like right now for some of these things.
And we have two more questions. So if this one's actually addressed to all of us. If galleries and museums start disclosing resource usage for their displays and exhibitions, do you think that would give them even more incentive to adopting these practices? Who wants to start?
Wait, say that again. Can you repeat it?
Sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
If galleries and museums start disclosing resource usage for their displays and exhibitions, do you think that would give them even more incentive to adopting these practices? I think it's harking back to our conversation earlier. I think, Jason, you raised the point about the secrecy in the art world now and the need to start being more kind of open between institutions, and then that will help influence change.
There was a big conference last week on sustainability for regular freight forwarders, not for common carriers. And one of the things they said you need to do is address who this is for. And I think you can put those numbers out, but until you figure out like who that information is for and who's going to push it forward, that's the issue, right? So like what they said is, who is this for? First of all, it was like a 5-point. It was viewing public, it was investors, which would be your board members. It was your suppliers, which would be your artists, your employees, and making them feel good about what they're doing inside of their institutions. And then lastly, and maybe most important, is communities where these institutions are based. So if you can address and sort of pinpoint what it's for and then go out with that information to those communities or to those individual aspects, like that's the key point, and figuring out where it's going to affect change long-term and quickly.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that the art world is transparent about is, for example, where things have come in from, because a lot of times curators feel proud of the fact that they've brought together things from such disparate locations, right? So it'll say private collection Switzerland, private collection USA, etc. So I think that there is already a practice of kind of championing this, and it's kind of reframing the story there and thinking about, okay, so you've brought it around from all around the world, but was that really what was required at that specific moment in time? So there is data out there and transparency. It's about reframing the way that it's seen.
This is like a sort of smart meter for a museum, right? So you're at home, you can tell how much energy you're using. Everyone's got them in the UK. It tells you how much electricity or gas you're using. You have it for an exhibition. It tells you what the carbon count of getting everything there is.
I don't know if it needs to be that specific, right? I think that it's more about showing that you've thought about it. I completely agree with you, Andrew, that like the art needs to be there and we all want to experience art. But I think that sponsors, patrons, increasingly collectors will care that you have thought about the carbon footprint and kind of weighed it up against what you're doing. And kind of a collector the other day said to me, look, after 2020, I just don't think that I'll go to an exhibition and see that they brought it from some hilltop village in the Alps and think that that is a really prestigious thing. I'll be a little bit more like, was that really worth it? So I think that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to position here.
I think some of that goes to serving providing resources for underserved communities as well too, and those underserved communities are not as accessible sometimes as well. So we have to look at how to address those issues moving forward also. And you asked me as a studio practice what I do too. I shipped work from New York to LA in a Rokbox. So there you go.
That's Sunny Beach, Jason.
Great. Oh, well, we're coming to the end anyway, so I think perfect timing there. But I think we covered some really interesting ground. And yeah, thank you all so much for that conversation and discussion. I think, as Jason's very aptly put at the beginning, I think one of the most exciting things is that we're actually talking about this and going through that change together and figuring out what the next steps are. So really pleased to chat with you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate being here, and I look forward to the breakout room.
Yeah,
Thank
me
you.
too. Great.